relative pronouns and hence the relative clauses in German. So let's take a look at two independent clauses. So two sentences that stand on their own. Wir besuchen unseren Stiefvater. We visit our stepfather. Unser Stiefvater kommt aus England. Our stepfather comes from England. So these are two separate sentences. Subject, verb, subject, verb. This one has a direct object, and this one has a prepositional phrase. Now, while these are good sentences, sometimes we want to vary our sentence structure. So we want to combine these sentences. We would do so by using a relative pronoun and making one of these a relative clause. So that's what we're going to examine today. So first thing we want to look at is what's common between these two statements. Hopefully you picked up on that they're both talking about stepfather. So these are two common elements. Now, in the first example, this common element is in the direct object, and in the second one, it is the subject. So it's the same element or the same thing, but they're in two different cases. In German, this would be accusative, and in German, this would be the nominative case. But there's a way we can still combine these sentences regardless of where this common element, this common object, or this same thing lies in sentences. So we're going to look at what those are in terms of relative pronouns. Now, one of the things that you're going to notice is this could also be like the stepfather or the stepfather here. So den and der, depending on how we want to replace this, those would be our relative pronouns. Now, we'll examine this chart in depth in a minute. Just go with me and believe that I know what I'm talking about. And note that den and der are not just the here. Den and der are the who, if you will. So how do we take we visit our stepfather comes from England, and we could say we visit our stepfather who comes from England, or our stepfather, comma, who we visit, comma, comes from England. So just believe me that those are the relative pronouns. So once again, like I said, direct object versus the subject. So how does that transpire? So we have, wir besuchen unseren Stiefvater. Unser Stiefvater kommt aus England. So I would suggest, once again, looking at what's similar, noting that they're different cases. And we're going to do this. We're going to go ahead and replace our stepfather in this sentence with the relative pronoun. Just believe me when I say this is right. Once again, we'll look at the chart in a minute. So what we would do is, wir besuchen unseren Stiefvater, comma, let me see if I can draw that here, comma, it's not the best, we visit our stepfather, who from England comes, period. So that's what we did. We kept our main clause. We visit our stepfather. We put a comma. We replaced our stepfather with the relative pronoun who. And then notice that much like a subordinating conjunction, we have to put the conjugated verb at the end of the sentence. So what we have here was sort of that wonky word order. So we visit our stepfather who from England comes, or in English, we visit our stepfather who comes from England. So it's the who, if you will. It could also be that. We can use it as, so who if it's a person, that if it's an object. And that relative pronoun is the thing that's going to link. It's going to be our joining word, if you will, when we're combining two sentences. That is our relative pronoun. As previously stated, the most important thing to note is it's very similar to those subordinating conjunctions when we look at the rules for combining them. So think about weil or das. So here's the example again. Wir besuchen unseren Stiefvater, der aus England kommt. So, main clause, who from England comes, treating it like a subordinating conjunction by putting the conjugated verb to the end of the sentence. Zum Beispiel, ich lese die Zeitung. I read the newspaper. Du hast die Zeitung gekauft. You did buy the newspaper, so I didn't buy it. I'm probably just borrowing it from you. I can combine these two elements by using the main clause, figuring out what the relative pronoun is. So one thing we want to note is what's the case, okay? What is the case of the noun that we're replacing? Oh, sorry. Rewind. What is the gender? Excuse me, not the case. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to look up what's the gender, okay? So if you know Zeitung, it's feminine. So in this case, it's feminine. The second thing is in the clause where it's at, then we determine the case, okay? What's the case in the clause where it's at? So in the context of this one, you is the subject. You have bought, so verb, subject. So use nominative. You have bought who or what? The newspaper is therefore the direct object, aka accusative. So gender and case is going to then allow us to use the chart that we'll look at in just a moment. Okay? Gender case chart. So we have our clause. We've now used gender case chart to figure this out, and then we push our conjugated verb to the end of that clause. So repeat the main clause, figure out the relative pronoun, and then worry about our word order. Where does this verb go? So pause this video, make sure you write all this stuff down, and I would make sure that you include all of my labels. As pretty as they are, yours can probably look better. Resume when you're ready to go. Oh, and don't forget this. So here's the chart. Masculine, feminine, neuter, plural, nominative, accusative, dative, and genitive. You're going to notice that this is very similar to the definite articles. Der, die, das, die, den, die, das, die, dem, der, dem. Whoa, what up? This is crazy different. Dem, der, dem, den now has an E and N-E. Des, der now has extra letters as well. So you'll notice that there's a little bit of a change, but you basically like 80% know this chart. I know that's bad math, but it's as close as I can do. Der, die, das, die, den, die, das, die, dem, der, dem, denen, dessen, deren, dessen, deren. So in the example where we looked at the stepfather, we were looking at masculine accusative. That's how, actually, I digress. We said he comes from England, so sorry about that. We were using masculine nominative, so der. In the example about the newspaper, we were utilizing feminine accusative, so that was when we had D. Don't forget, nominative is the subject or the predicate nominative of the sentence. Accusative is typically the direct object. Of course, you have prepositions to worry about. Dative is the indirect object. Of course, you have prepositions and dative verbs to worry about. And then genitive is possession. I almost wrote posse, but sorry. It's possession. So, here's an example. Die Frage, die Sie gestellt haben, ist sehr interessant. The question that you have posed, or the question you have asked, is very interesting. So in the context of this sentence, D refers back to the question. All right? And notice, this is one of the greatest things I love, is we're able to use a relative clause in the middle of a sentence. Like really spice up our writing. Instead of just saying, the question is very interesting. You did ask the question. That's very boring. So the question that you asked is very interesting. Doesn't that sound so much better? The other thing is we want to watch out when we look at prepositions. So watch out for prepositions in this example. Okay, so we have the city in which I live is very pretty or nice or beautiful. So ihn, Anna, hinter, ihn, neben, über, unter, vor, zwischen. So ihn in this context, it becomes dative because we're talking about location. It's a two-way preposition. Where you live is dative. And so die Stadt becomes der because we're looking at the dative case. So just some other things to note. All right, so I'm going to ask you to try these sentences. Just fill in the relative pronoun. That's all I'm asking you to do. So pause this video, write them out, underline the relative pronoun. When you are ready, check the relative pronouns with the answers. Here we go. Pause now. Resuming for the answers. Das Buch, das ich lese, ist gut. Der Kuchen, den ich backe, ist Schokolade. Das Auto, das ich kaufen werde, wird grün sein. Das Auto, mit dem ich fahre, ist grün. Die Frau, die ich liebe, ist wunderschön. Die Frau, bei der ich wohne, ist nett. How'd you do? Did you watch out for prepositions? Mit and by? Danke.